Australians we have, like that. So all the folks that we've had come over from Australia, frequent that coffee shop. Anytime between 6 and 6:30, you'll find 5 or 8 of our Australian colleagues over there.
Is it the time zone difference, or they just love the coffee that much?
No, they just love the coffee. Yeah, it reminds them of the coffee in Australia. So, but it's a nice little coffee shop, a nice little play on words there.
Yeah. Regional coffee tasting preferences are interesting.
Yeah.
Hey, Carmen and Katie tell me that we're live right now. Why don't we just start the show? And let me just go through it a minute, Brandon. They're going to tell me when to read an intro to it. We're going to play the official open to the show, and then it will officially begin. We know you've got to wrap up around 3:30. We'll make sure that happens then and cut you free.
Okay.
Cool. Okay, Carmen, Katie, we're ready to go. This is Autoline After Hours with John McElroy and Gary Vasilash, episode 505 for April 16th of 2020. Cadillac makes Blackwing its pinnacle of performance. Watch Autoline After Hours live at Autoline.tv every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 12 p.m. Pacific. You can subscribe to this podcast for free by searching for Autoline in iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires. Your journey, our passion.
All right, everybody, welcome to After Hours, especially you, my co-host, Mr. Gary Vasilash.
John, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well.
So I'm sitting here in my living room and I'm looking out the front window, and periodically it is snowing. And I guess no one told Mother Nature that it's April 16th. Let's stop.
I know. I've had it with that snow at this time of year.
And I thought that here's a little ironic, perhaps fun fact, that yesterday was the anniversary of the Titanic sinking. I know we're going to talk about the economy a little later in the show, but it's not a good sign.
Hey, listen, I know all about April 15th. It's the date that Abraham Lincoln died. It's the date that your taxes are normally due, and I know all this because yesterday was my birthday.
Oh, belated happy birthday.
Well, thanks. Hey, we got to let everybody know we've got Chris Paukert on with us today from Roadshow by CNET. Hello out there, Chris.
Hey, great to be back, and happy birthday.
Oh, thanks. I didn't bring that up just so everybody would say happy birthday, but Gary started spouting off the stats that I normally rattle off when I talk about April 15th.
Yeah, it's fun to be here from the at-home edition of the show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, let's get to the exciting part, because right now we've got Brandon Vivian, the executive chief engineer at General Motors, but more specifically at Cadillac. And Brandon, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. It's great to be here, and happy birthday also.
I'm going to milk this for all it's worth.
All right, so Brandon.
Go ahead, Gary.
All right, so I was going to say, Brandon, this week Cadillac made some big news, and why don't you tell those who didn't hear the big news what it was?
Yeah, so very exciting time here for Cadillac, and we announced that our top-level performance model of the V Series will be named the V Blackwing, and we'll have 2 variants of that. We will have the CT5 Blackwing and the CT4 Blackwing. And more importantly, we also announced that we're going to give the consumer choice between a manual and automatic transmission. So we're very excited to be able to announce this and reveal what we've been working on for a long period of time here, and that's expanding the V Series lineup.
Man, just what you said there triggered a million questions on my part. But let's start with Blackwing. We all knew it was the special 4.2-liter V8 engine, which everybody's been raving about, even though none of us have driven it. So we know that engine's gone away. At least I think we know that's gone away. Why take the Blackwing name and make it the pinnacle of performance for the V Series?
Well, there's some history with the Blackwing name, and it harkens back to the merlets on our badge, in a historical element. But more importantly, when we developed the CT6 Blackwing engine, it is the pinnacle of performance and technology and craftsmanship. But that applies to all of our V Series models, and so going forward, it made a lot of sense to link it to everything that we do at the ultimate V performance level.
So I got to say, when you said marlets on our badge, I was thinking, oh, that's the little ducks, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's what a marlet is. So
yes,
just
thank you.
People were wondering about that. I mean, I was.
I never knew that. I never knew that they had black wings. I'm going to have to go back and look at that because the ducks or the merlets disappeared off the badge some time ago. So I think that's kind of cool to have that kind of heritage. I never heard the Blackwing name used before.
Well, we're very proud of being an American manufacturer with a very long history, right? Well over 100 years. And so we take that inspiration and project that forward.
So, Brandon, I'm wondering, you mentioned that there's going to be a manual offered with the Blackwing vehicles. Can you give us any details on how many speeds it might have?
Well, we released a little audio clip as a teaser, and that gives you a good indication if we count the gear changes.
Okay, hold on. We've got that. Katie, let's bring that up right now, and we're going to count as we go through the shifts.
So that sounds like a nice tall sixth gear, cruising gear. To Gary's point, it is fantastic that you brought back two transmissions. But I wanted to ask, why is it important in an environment where so many other automakers are moving away from a manual transmission offering? This is probably going to be a small percentage of the model mix. What does it do for you?
So first and foremost, when we deliver any of the V Series vehicles, it's about delivering an emotional connection and delivering passion. And Cadillac is meant to be an and, not an or answer. And so it's not either or. You don't get performance in just in automatic. We're going to give the customer a choice of manual or automatic based on their particular preferences. And if you're driving enthusiast and appreciate a manual, then we have it for you. Additionally, as you mentioned, we know what's going on in the marketplace, but it's a company like ours that's able to deliver a product for those driving enthusiasts that don't have any other outlets. And we want to attract those people because passion is at our core, and we want those people and want those customers.
So yeah, what you're saying is...
Go ahead, Chris. Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. I was just going to say, so what you're saying is that you've got an area of opportunity there because other automakers are stepping away from that transmission that maybe you can get some people in the door that you might not otherwise get.
Yeah, we're going to attract anybody that is a driving enthusiast, and absolutely, it gives us an outlet to attract those customers, and for us, that's delighting the customer is absolutely core to what we're doing, and this is a way when we look at market research. We have the ability to do this, and that's why we've chosen this direction. And really, for those who want to engage at that level, they're going to be extremely satisfied.
Brandon, you must have seen this as a real opportunity, like you're talking about here, to get hardcore enthusiasts to really look at Cadillac brand in a different way. I mean, come on. Corvette didn't even go with a manual transmission. You guys must have seen an opportunity. I'm sure the take rate is going to be next to nothing, but you're going to get a way big kudos from the enthusiast and community for what you've done.
Yeah, you hit it on the head. We're looking for those hardcore people. We've been elevating what V Series means over the course of the last 16 years, or this will be 16 years of V Series vehicles, and we continue to elevate the bar. And for this generation of vehicles, there isn't going to be, we believe, another vehicle that will be able to deliver the performance and engagement.
So Brandon, Tell us a little bit about the CT4 and the CT5 as vehicles onto themselves that you're putting this engine and transmission into.
Yeah, so we have an extremely long history, as you guys know, of delivering sedans, to the market as Cadillac, and these represent, at least in the U.S., a percentage of the market of people that are maybe more personalized in their automotive experience, and less utilitarian from a need standpoint, but on a global aspect. And of course, we're a global brand. The segments that these two cars play in are extremely large and extremely important globally. And so for us, having an entry level into the brand of the CT4, a very sporty, compact, vehicle is critical in our lineup. And then of course, in the heart of the car market is the Lux 3 segment, and that's where we have the CT5 placed.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say, can you talk about the relative performance differences between the models that came before it? The ATS and the CTS were both, very well-respected vehicles as far as enthusiasts go. The newer cars seem to be maybe a little bit softer in terms of their tuning, a little bit quieter, a little bit more refined. Can you talk about what that gives you, or what you need to work against in moving toward Blackwing?
Yeah, so when we approached the design of CT4 and CT5, when we looked at the positioning of the cars, they were, we wanted to make sure, as I mentioned, to give an and. We didn't want them to be just sporty or just luxurious. We wanted them to be both sporty and luxurious. And our philosophy is isolated precision. And that's what we're going after here, is a feeling that the cars will do whatever you want them to do, whatever mood you're in. The cars will allow you to relax when you want to relax, or you want to have fun and be sporty. They will deliver that. And so expanding the performance envelope and giving the customer whatever they want was the goal.
So will the vehicle, so someone could just get a stock CT4, then they could get a CT4V, and then they could get a CT4V Blackwing. Is that sort of the stair step?
Yeah, we have, let's call it two personas. We have a luxury persona and a sport persona. And on the luxury persona side, you can start with, we'll start with CT4, base CT4, and you can up to a premium Lux. And with the premium Lux, you can choose a 2-liter or the 2.7 liter. On the sport side of the persona, you start with a sport, and then we go to V Series, and then ultimately V Series Blackwing.
And for the Blackwing, what you talked about in the release is that they get tuned chassis. Can you go into some of the specifics of what you've done for the Blackwing series in that regard?
So what I can't talk about exact specifics, but what I'll tell you is the chassis tuning is very specific to deliver not only fully track capable performance, which our previous versions of V Series have elevated to, but also ride comfort. And our goal is to be very sophisticated about how we deliver performance. Again, it's not handling or ride, it's ride and handling both at an exceptional level. And so there will be very specific tuning when it comes to structural enhancements, specific tuning as it relates to the chassis calibration, springs, stabilizer bars, brakes, and most importantly, especially with this category of cars, is aerodynamics. Aerodynamics is a huge element, and we've had thousands of hours of CFD and actual wind tunnel testing on the cars.
So you mentioned track capable, and it was something I was going to ask you about. Now, these vehicles, a person could drive as a daily driver, but then on weekends take it to a track?
Yeah, the V Blackwings are designed to do that. They're designed to deliver track capable performance if you like it on a closed course, whether it's autocross or otherwise, and also be equally comfortable and extremely competent driving as a daily driver, or driving to to dinner. So it's about delivering the full performance envelope and delighting the driver no matter where they're going. So it's full track capability right out of the showroom floor.
Brandon, usually to achieve that track capability in a good ride, you need magnetic rheological shocks or some sort of thing like that. Do these cars have that?
So our V products that we have for sale right now in CT5V and CT4V have the latest generation of MR 4.0, and the CT5V utilizes electronic limited slip differential, and you'll see a similar recipe as we move forward with V Blackwing. But it's a lot of other little changes we'll talk about when the time comes. We can't let everything out just right yet.
I know, but I got to keep pushing anyway.
That's okay.
You referenced a time frame. Can you talk about where these models are at in terms of their gestation? In the release, you talked about continuing to track test them, and I think we were kind of expecting to see them later this year, but I understand that might not be until maybe Q1 of next year.
Yeah, so what we're saying in a release, we'll have these vehicles in a reveal type of situation, very early next year, and they'll be for sale mid in the summer of 2021.
So, Brandon, I was looking at your background and the time you spent at General Motors. You've been working driveline and chassis and vehicle performance. Is this sort of the culmination of what you've been doing through your career to this point?
I've been very fortunate to work on a lot of really, really fantastic products at General Motors, whether it's starting on the EV1 or all of that's what I worked on when I got hired in, and it's been every day. I love to come to work and develop vehicles that people are proud to own and are happy to own. And if you look at my history, what we're doing with Cadillac, with having innovation be the hallmark of this brand, and really from an American manufacturer, that's what's expected, and we're delivering that. It's been very rewarding, and we're going to continue to deliver that here in years to come.
I think it was John that mentioned the CT6 V Blackwing and the V8 in that car and how that's not in these cars, which I think a lot of people expected that motor would be going into these cars. Can you talk about why that didn't happen, or what the future of that engine is?
Yeah, I've worked on a lot of the V products that we've had over the course of our 16-year run, and that vehicle was really the culmination and really the ultimate expression of isolated precision. But as we've designed each vehicle, we pick what we believe are the right component sets to win. We're not going to deliver a vehicle if we don't believe we can't win with it. And so as we laid out that vehicle and what it needed to do, it needed an engine like the 4.2 liter twin turbo, and that's what we delivered. The vehicles that we just released have their own segment that they're competing in, their own competition, and of course there's a familiarity with every single V product, but those vehicles, their attributes determined a particular solution that didn't include the 4.2 liter. So that engine is incredible. Those cars are incredible. What we've learned from those cars are being applied to our future Cadillac models. And as I've said before, I continue to look for opportunities to reuse the engine.
Brandon, you mentioned that you've done a considerable amount of testing. Have you benchmarked these cars against some other vehicles from other makers, and can you tell us what those might be?
So yes, absolutely. We have our competitive set, that we take with us everywhere we go, and the competition is squarely our Audi, BMW, Mercedes-Benz, and Lexus vehicles. And so we bring their respective performance vehicles where we go and we test with them, and that's been our MO for the 16 years that we've delivered V Series, is where we deliver winning products, and you have to know what winning means so that if you've achieved your goal.
So if you took your cars and your competitive set to the Nürburgring, would you spank them?
We're working on that, and that's winning is beating them on the track. Absolutely.
Yeah. Hey, so what's been reported so far, and I'm seeing if you can confirm any of this. CT4 getting a 3.6 liter V8 twin turbo with the Blackwing version, maybe 464 horsepower.
We'll give you the specs here in the future. We don't want to give away everything.
Okay, I apologize. I won't push you on that. How about pricing? You guys are getting much more aggressive on your pricing with the Nun V and the Nun Blackwing versions of the CT4 and the CT5. Are the Blackwings going to be a whale of a bargain when they come out? And I got to believe with coronavirus and the way the industry is going and everything, maybe your pricing is a little bit jumbled, but it sounds to me like you've got an opportunity to go after the Europeans, especially with more aggressive pricing.
Yeah, we're not ready to talk about the price either. That'll come, in due time. But I'd say it's going to follow the formula of what we've delivered in the past, and that's something that's part of the delight of owning these products.
Versus the ATS-V and CTS-V before them, what are the performance attributes that you wanted to focus on improving the most with these two new vehicles?
So, as I mentioned before, we're really trying to expand the envelope and be very sophisticated. So everything that we do at Cadillac, we focus on being bold, optimistic, and sophisticated all at the same time. And so delivering track performance, yeah, it's in a lot of ways, because we work on the race cars also, it's easier to just to focus on a race car and build a car just for the track. To build a car that goes everywhere it needs to go and satisfy the customers in a daily driving situation and a track car is very, very difficult. But our two main areas of focus were that refinement, and so delivering to the track performance, but at a higher refinement level, whether it's noise, whether it's the overall poise of the car, and then second is making the car faster. If we didn't make the cars faster, then we weren't going to deliver them. And so a lot of focus. So it meant thousands of hours working on our aerodynamic balance and getting the right power levels out of the car. But that level of refinement, along with the speed, or where you're going to see the two areas of improvement.
So speaking of the aero, I mean, if someone sees a conventional CT4 and then it's parked up against a Blackwing, will there be distinct aero differences that will be seen?
Yeah, we try to be sophisticated with how we deliver every one of our technologies, whether it's aerodynamics or whether it's how we integrate ELSD or MR into the vehicles. And there will be certainly visual cues that'll be easily recognizable, but a lot of where the aero tweaks are areas under the car and with ducting that isn't maybe visible right from the naked eye. But we do celebrate those, and we'll have more to share when we do release it.
Mm-hmm.
Brandon, I mentioned coronavirus earlier. Yeah. How's that infecting how you guys do all your work? Can you continue development of the cars while most of us are in some sort of quarantine?
Yeah, well, you mentioned the global pandemic, and I think I'd like to just thank all of the healthcare workers that are taking care of people who are sick and are out there on the front lines. And so my appreciation goes out to those folks. And how it impacts us is certainly no different than how it impacts every business that isn't able to work physically. And so for us, we're able to continue virtual development. We have a lot of tools now. We're using one currently, but we're continuing a lot of the very specific work that can from an engineering standpoint. But without the ability to drive the cars and produce cars at the assembly plant, there's limits of what you can get done. But we absolutely are using every bit of technology to our advantage to continue working.
So these vehicles were developed concurrently with the new C8 Corvette, and obviously they're different vehicles. But I'm wondering if there's any cross chat between the two programs, if anybody's sliding any papers across the transom, or do you guys talk about these things, and did you guys learn anything from each other?
So we develop technologies simultaneously. Cadillac being the innovation leader in the company, we try to do what we can initially and then spread that out to other brands. And so the new MR system, we're using it first, and then of course it's going over to the Corvette. And so as we develop technologies in Cadillac, we will proliferate those throughout the company where it makes sense, and so we do trade notes on what we're doing and what they're doing and what they're seeing. And typically we've been a little bit ahead of the curve here with some of our development, but yes, we do share notes back and forth. What we develop and what they develop, we work together to make sure that we're getting the absolute best out of the technologies where we share them.
You guys ever go to the track at the same time?
Yes, we do.
Who wins?
You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised.
All right, so I got to ask. Okay, Cadillac's got a big introduction this year with the Escalade. Did you participate in the development of that at all?
Yeah. So as part of my role for Cadillac, we're implementing technologies across the brand and a consistency across the brand. So, the elements that we've shown in the Escalade, it's really our escalation of craftsmanship, play on words,
Yeah.
and our technology. The infotainment system, the screens, and some of the audio system components. We've been pushing from a brand technology, and it really harkens to the future of Cadillac. What you see in Escalade, you will see proliferated throughout the brand.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got a couple of questions here from viewers. Speaking of the Escalade, Mark K. and Evan Johnson want to know about performance SUVs. Could we see a Blackwing Escalade or some of the other SUVs in the lineup?
Yeah, certainly we've seen a need for performance variants for SUVs, including Escalade. So I'd say we're actively looking at all possibilities, and there'll be more to come in the future there.
Is it necessary that the Blackwing is the pinnacle of performance by itself, or could it be the pinnacle of luxury by itself as well? Like, could you have a Blackwing Escalade that's more luxurious but not necessarily deliver the performance on top of that too?
Well, the way that we're positioning, the Blackwing is it's craftsmanship, technology, and performance. It's all three of those. It's not without that. And we do have Platinum, that sits atop CT6 and Escalade. So we do have an outlet for the top of the line luxury models also.
Did you do some engineering of the interiors in terms of seating and bolstering? Any changes in terms of materials that you might use in the Blackwing versus the conventional V?
There will be seat differences that go appropriate to the mission of the car. So more to come when we actually reveal the vehicle. But yes, there are, and what we also, we mentioned Escalade, and when we talk about craftsmanship, what we're doing in Escalade in the focus and detail, especially throughout the interior on the materials and how they're constructed, that's an important element that will follow in all of the vehicles.
Okay, you already did one great thing for enthusiasts by including a manual transmission in these Blackwings. You know what else enthusiasts love? Station wagons. And so we got a question from Scott C. here saying, can you make a business case for a CT5 sport wagon?
So I will tell you, I've been looking at that many times. And we continue to look for opportunities to make money, and I will continue to do that. So nothing to announce right now, but certainly when you see the enthusiasm of our customers, and when I'm out there talking to our customers and our V Lab members or our V Club members, there is an absolute fanaticism around the V wagons and the wagons in general, and so because of that, we continue to study a future variant.
Ooh, great question, Scott. Thanks for sending that in.
So Brandon, organizationally, is there a team of engineers who are just dedicated to V, and then a subset of them dedicated to Blackwing, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we do have a separate organization that just focuses on V Series Blackwing vehicles, and those people take the learnings from each of the products and make sure that the same DNA is going into each of them. The broader DNA for Cadillac is disseminated through myself, Andrew Smith, and others in the Cadillac marketing.
Hmm. So how much time have you spent behind the wheel of the new vehicle?
Well, I spend as much time in all of my products, as I can. I have a CT5V sitting in my driveway right now, but yeah, I've driven the V Blackwing on all the tracks that we've tested on, and of course, drive it weekly, out at the Milford Proving Ground. So we know over our history here exactly what the formula is to deliver, and when I'm sure you guys have seen what we're doing on CT4 and 5V, and that will just be amped up further on Blackwing.
So I don't know if you noticed, but in the background, Chris has got his helmet there. So I think he's trying to send you.
It's actually a motorcycle helmet, but sure, handle that.
Subliminal message.
Yeah, it's trying to send you something.
Brandon, can you tell us what some of the tracks are that you use for development?
Yeah, well, VIR is one of our main tracks that we go to. We were just at Willow Springs, recently, and of course we do travel when the weather's inclement here in Michigan, and otherwise we're using our Milford Road course, which was built over a decade ago and serves us very, very well. Extremely challenging track.
I've driven it. It is challenging.
Yeah. So, and it's that way on purpose. We designed it that way. And of course we'll use Nürburgring, also when the time's right.
That's great.
Were you surprised by anything as you were developing this vehicle?
So far, the power is what's been very, very satisfying. Our goal, we set a performance goal overall, and we balance how we deliver that. It might be part aerodynamics, part grip, part power, but doing that in a very coordinated fashion. But being able to watch these cars go around the track, you can visibly see acceleration, and that's very, very exciting.
We've talked a lot about on-track performance, but we haven't talked about formalized motorsports. Can you talk about that as it applies to these two models?
Yeah, so we have a very long history of linking, motorsports to V Series, and in fact, in 2004, we launched the race car ahead of the production car, and so throughout our history, we've always raced, and we're currently racing, in the DPI class, with Cadillac in V Series. So you will see that that relationship continue, and we share the designers that are working on the cars. The CT4V and CT4V Blackwing were designed by the same engineer and designer who worked on our DPI car and worked on all those aerodynamics. And so there's lots of transfer between what we do in racing and what we're doing with V Series production cars. It's very specific and it's real.
One of our viewers, Danny Youngblood, points out, as you just did, the DPI series. I mean, you guys dominated that racing. It's gotten more competitive, but he wants to know, why doesn't Cadillac do any real marketing or advertising around it? I know you're the engineering guy, but he's got that question for Cadillac.
I think that we're doing the right balance of putting the money into the program and getting it back out. And certainly there's lots of things that we're doing, activations at the track and V corrals at the track. When we were down, at Circuit of the Americas, we had over 80 V Series owners show up, and very active corral. So there's lots of things that we do, that may not be directly seen, but for our very enthusiastic customers, being able to interact with the race teams, being able to interact, with the brand directly, are other ways that we're utilizing it very successfully. And I know it sometimes doesn't show with everyone, but it's what we're doing.
Yeah, in other words, it's very targeted what you're doing. It's
Absolutely.
not just,
Yeah.
sort of broadcast out there to the world.
Yes.
So I've got to ask you, Brendan. We heard earlier the engine note, and Chris liked it so much that he did a piece earlier this week where he played it at least twice. Was it twice or three times, Chris?
Twice. Well, I wanted people to hear it just naturally, and then I wanted them to focus on listening to it and realizing you had pregnant pauses between each of the shifts. So it spells out manual transmission. Of course, you guys also revealed that and confirmed that, but I thought people would find that interesting, and it sounds great. I mean, it sounds like a big honking V8. So
is that real noise though? I mean, is that the real sound? That's what I want to ask you. There's nothing added. There's no symposer in there.
That is a car at Milford, Michigan, and that is a mic hanging off the back of it. And so, Chris, you were very observant. We specifically gave the instruction on pause between the gear shifts. So, when I saw your piece yesterday, a number of us were smiling. You got it, and we appreciate that.
I'm glad you guys brought that up, because I thought, who's ever driving that car has got to shift that thing faster.
Well,
now I understand.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. See, that's how we work in marketing.
Very clever.
Brandon, we know that you got to go, but we really want to thank you for spending the time with us today and bring us at least a little bit up to speed on the Blackwing series. And I know we're going to learn a whole lot more in the future here.
Yeah, it's extremely exciting to be able to get these products out and really deliver passion for the Cadillac customers. And we have a range of vehicles that they can select within CT4 and CT5, and I'm sure we'll be able to talk more in the future when we're able to drive the vehicles together.
Cool. We'll have you back then.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Brendan.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to take a very quick commercial break and give a shout out to our good friends at Bridgestone. All right, we're back talking all things automotive. And Gary, I know you've got a number of topics that we want to get into, but before we do that, Chris, you just bought a Honda Super Cub.
I did. For those who aren't aware of what the Super Cub is, it's actually a motorcycle, or I put the motorcycle in air quotes. There she is right there. That's actually my bike. A lot of people will look at that and think that that's a moped, and I don't blame you. This one has 125 cc's, and it's the hot rod of the bunch. It's actually it's the most prolific motorized vehicle ever made. They've made over 100 million of these things by now. They're all over the world. And I'm a kind of a big proponent of the slow car fast movement. I got a Miata. I've got a weird Japanese market mini car, as you've seen before. And
Had
this
it
is
on
sort
the
of
show, the POW.
Yeah, this is the two-wheel equivalent to that. And it's an icon.
So is this a vintage one?
No, actually, this is a brand new model. They brought it back. This is the 2019. I like this colorway. The 2020 is already out. It's red and white, which is also Heritage color scheme. But it is a new model. They've made some strategic updates. Like I said, it's 125 cc's. Some of them are 50, 70 cc's. But this also has all LED lighting. It has ABS. It's got actually, believe it or not, it's even keyless go. So there are some concessions to modernity, but it's only got 9 horsepower and it weighs about 240 pounds. So you're not going to get yourself into too much trouble.
And what the original one came out, the late 50s?
Yeah, I think U.S. exports began in '59, and it's really what cemented Honda in the U.S. I mean, you meet the nicest people on a Honda campaign. That really not only changed Honda's fortunes coming to the U.S. and allowed sort of a red carpet for cars to come. It also changed the image of motorcycles, because previous to that, it was sort of, the Hells Angels or the rough and tumble kind of thing. And Honda took a very different and very Japanese approach, and they showed a lot of young people, like clean cut, collared shirts kind of thing, men, women. They emphasized how easy it is to ride. This one has a 4-speed semi-automatic gearbox, so it's a centrifugal clutch. There's not a whole lot to master. You just kind of get it on and figure it out.
That's great. That's cool.
That sort of raises an interesting point. What's the likelihood that motorcycles, as we have historically known them, will just disappear?
I think there's always going to be hardcore motorcycle people, and I got to be completely honest with you. Motorcycles are new to me. I've been interested in them for years. I've never pulled the trigger because, well, frankly, I don't tend to be very disciplined about speed. And so with the roads that we have and all of that around here, it probably wasn't the greatest of ideas. In point of fact, I've been working on purchasing this vehicle, this bike for months. And of course, it happened during the pandemic. I don't even have my endorsement yet. So I've just been riding around my cul-de-sac, and there's an adjacent golf course and that sort of thing. Going back to your point, I just don't see people walking away from it. I think it's going to be a small segment, as it's always been. And I'm worried about brands like Harley Davidson.
I was just going to say that their fortunes are just, and they came out with that electric live wire, which doesn't seem to be providing much juice to their sales.
Well, it's hugely expensive. I think that's over $30,000, and that's something that not everybody can afford. And the people that are interested in electric bikes are maybe not interested in Harleys. Typically, you have to start somewhere. So I think that's a smart thing for them to do. And I hear that it rides very, very well. But it's a long play. And whether or not they have that much money to continue doing that is an open question, especially in light of the pandemic, hitting everybody where it hurts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just visually looking around. I mean, you used to see a lot of young guys on crotch rockets, and they seem to have diminished in numbers. Maybe that's just a bad observation on my part.
I don't know that it is one way or the other, to be perfectly honest with you. It might be a regional thing. And we are here in Michigan. We are just coming out of a long winter, or not even out of it yet.
Yeah.
But if you go to California, they're all over the place. And electric motorcycles, could have the opportunity to change things for a lot of people because the maintenance is a lot less. They sit, you just throw them in the corner of your garage and just pull it out whenever you want to. And there's really no maintenance to speak of. So that could change the equation for people.
Yeah.
So speaking about changing equations, gas prices are ridiculously low. And we've seen the administration pulling back on the CAFE requirements. So I put to you, John and Chris, will we see more V8s? Will we see more variants of Blackwing-like things coming from other manufacturers? Will we see Dodge have a renaissance in terms of making even more Hellcats and variants thereof? Is this going to cause a difference, or is that not likely to happen?
Go ahead, Chris.
Well, I would say that Dodge has already been enjoying a very nice renaissance with their V8 sales, with the fact that the Challenger is selling better now the last few years than it has since it came back. There's definitely a lot of interest around it. I don't see a lot of development dollars going into V8s right now, and I don't think that's going to change because you've got to remember that the U.S. is one market out of many markets, and there's still, whether or not they roll back emission standards here in the U.S., there's still other markets that command an awful lot of our R&D budgets that are not going to change. And frankly, electrification is coming in with some very impressive performance. And yes, I know the visceral nature of a V8 is not the same as electric motors, but the electric motors have the performance. So there's probably going to be a combination of both, and smaller displacement engines and that sort of thing. So I don't think we're going to see a lot of new V8s coming out.
Yeah, I totally agree. Look, a couple of things. Number one is, even though the Trump administration is backing off what the Obama administration wanted in terms of fuel economy regulations continue to get tighter every single year. In fact, they are going on at the same rate that they have from 2015 to 2020, will now be the same rate of improvement from here to 2025 and 26. The other thing is, I think everybody knows this is an aberration. Once things get back to normal, whether that takes 18 months, 24 months, who knows what it's going to be, maybe shorter, I doubt it, but gas prices are going to pop back up. And so who's going to commit to one of these 7-year loans or something like that, thinking that 7 years out, they're going to be paying $1.50 for a gallon for gasoline. I don't think anybody believes that.
So there was Automotive News did a webinar, teleconference, what have you today, and they had John Cassessa, who used to be at Ford and is now at Guggenheim Partners, an investment firm, and he had a very interesting point, what I had not thought about before. He says that, when the Berlin Wall fell, that auto companies started really focusing on globalization. And he thinks that we may be getting to a point where there will be more focus on regionalization rather than globalization, that you'll have companies that will say, you know what, we're going to get really, really good in our market. We're going to really dominate that market. And so, I begin to think about it, Chris, you mentioned that, there are regulations around the world that people have to pay attention to. But if you become a real focused regional player, if you're, say, General Motors, where basically you've got China and you've got the United States. I know they have some in South America, but be that as it may. I mean, isn't there the possibility that they say, what the heck, let's put more money into V8s?
Well, I think they'll continue to focus in the markets where they see success. We've seen General Motors in particular, largely pull out of Europe. And I think you'll see more rationalizing along those lines. But I also think that electrification, again, is going to continue to play a part, not only just because of emissions, but because there are younger people that are fascinated by the technology, that are coming into money and expecting that. They're expecting that from an environmental standpoint. They're expecting that just from a performance standpoint. Having, the oft-cited max torque at 0 RPM thing, that's a big difference. And vehicles that are I love dearly. I love the Mustang. I love the Challenger. But when there are performance cars that are electrified that can go up against those vehicles for similar money as will happen in the not too distant future, and maybe they don't make the same great noise, but they provide even more performance, I think that's going to be hard. And I think a lot of the traditional V8 audience is literally going to be aging out.
What do you think, John?
Well, yeah, I didn't hear what Cassessa had to say. Generally, I agree with what he was saying, but I think what you're going to see is more regionalization of supply chains. I don't think that Mercedes and BMW and Audi and Volkswagen and General Motors are going to pull out of China. I don't see that at all. But I do see them all becoming less dependent on supply chains coming so much out of China. And I think this is going to apply way beyond the automotive industry, where no one country is going to want to be so dependent on another country, especially when there's friction between those two countries. So I don't see in North America, say, a resurgence of V8s whatsoever. Like I said, fuel economy and emission standards will continue to tighten. There's still the ZEV mandate that California has adopted and a dozen other states have taken along with it. And when you look at the performance that's coming out of lower displacement engines, either whether they're electrified or not, or pure battery electric performance, wow. Except for the great sound, you really don't need a V8 anymore.
So do you both think that there will be continued investment on behalf of Ford and General Motors, let's say, on electric vehicles after we come out of this crisis?
That's a great question. And I think there's going to be a great reckoning that comes as a result of this. I think there will continue to be investments in electrification. Things will get scaled back with certain parties. I think the thing that's maybe more at risk is autonomy, because that had a less certain payoff to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree with that. In fact, General Motors has already publicly stated it is prioritizing the launch of its electric vehicles over everything else. Ford has made it very obvious it really still wants to launch the Mach-E at the end of this year. Now, if those things go out there and they don't sell very well and they're still making big bucks on internal combustion engines, maybe at that point you would see a shift. But at the same time, I think the deeper that we go into this decade, the greater the demand for electric vehicles is going to be as they continue to take the cost out of the batteries and make these things more affordable.
Okay, so Chris, to your point, a reduced amount of investment. So let's say they spent 10 last year. What will they spend next year? Will it be 5, 4,
I think
7?
it depends on the automaker. It depends on where they are and how much they're leveraged for that. There are certain companies that obviously have, the majority of their profit dollars tied up in trucks, and I think that market will come back probably the quickest, and is actually ebbed the least so far from what we've seen. So that will continue to bring in those dollars that they need to fund these other vehicles. But if you're somebody like Mazda, that doesn't have the truck components, and frankly has been very behind on electrification, you're probably a little bit stuck.
Mm-hmm. So Chris mentioned trucks. We can perhaps read that as a slightly veiled reference to Ford. John, you've been very interested in what Ford's CFO said earlier this week. Why don't you tell us about that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Ford had a big announcement that, they've accumulated a cash war chest of over $30 billion. And he said it could easily get them through to the end of the third quarter. But that set my hair on fire, because that means Ford's going to run out of cash in October. And if it's Ford, it's all of them, automakers and suppliers alike. Big companies like Ford, General Motors, Volkswagen, Toyota, they spend on average about $2 billion every single week. They spend about $8 billion every single month. So you burn through $30 billion in a matter of months. I mean, none of them get to the end of the year unless they can find new ways of raising revenue. And this is where I think the governments of the world are really going to have to step up in a big way to subsidize car sales on the part of consumers, to help out dealers with some sort of financial aid. Same with suppliers, and of course, without question, automakers. It'll be fascinating to see who steps up by how much and how quickly. But I'm telling you, when I heard that, and they were almost kind of bragging, oh yeah, we can get to the end of the third quarter. My hair was on fire when I heard that.
What's your take on that, Chris?
I think that's exactly correct. I wanted to ask you both. There was some talk last week about a cash for clunkers style legislation to jumpstart car sales again. Do you think that's a likelihood? Do you think that's a good solution, or what would you do?
Go ahead, Gary.
Well, I certainly think it's a likelihood, because they're going to have to take some action. But one of the things that sort of gets lost in this consideration is, we're heavily focused on the auto industry. And, if we go back to the last cash for clunkers 2008, 2009 time period, I mean, that was when the auto industry had a problem. Right now, every industry has a problem. Yeah. Okay. I mean, what the car companies are into right now, I mean, can you imagine being in aerospace? I mean, nobody's flying. I mean, when this lifts, we're all going to get in our cars and go driving around. But how many of us are going to be, oh, I can't wait to fly to California? It's just completely changing the equation. So what does the government do in terms of being able to support all industries? So, at least cash for clunkers might be able to provide some, let's say, lubrication to the process that won't be necessarily, huge dollars. What do you think, John?
Yeah, well, I keep talking about this modern monetary theory, MMT as it's referred to. I don't want to go into all the details right now, because it's I'm not even sure I understand them all. But the whole theory is, any sovereign nation, if it's got a bunch of debts or it's got to have a real stimulus for the economy, should just print the money. And I think we're going to see that theory being tested right now. Congress has already come up with a $2 trillion stimulus package. That's just step one, or what they call phase one. They're already talking all the way up to phase 4. I think before this is over, the United States is easily going to have to spend $6 to $8 trillion as a defibrillator to get the economy going again. And like I said before, a big component of that will be money for consumers to buy cars. Cash for clunkers has been talked about. There's a lot of pushback. They got to come up with a different name. Maybe it becomes a subsidy for electric cars, so you turn in your internal combustion engine to buy an electric one. This is all being talked about in Washington right now. It's all talked about, the polite way of putting it. They're arguing with each other about all this. But the bottom line is every country in the world is going to have to provide massive stimulus unless they want to slip into a Great Depression.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the thought about pushing for electric cars to be the incentive is interesting. I just don't see this current administration taking that bent. But who knows? Unprecedented times.
All right, let's talk about something more fun. So there was a new record set in the Cannonball run, which is the coast-to-coast race.
Gotta love it. You gotta love it.
2,825.3 miles. These guys did it in Audi A8L in 26 hours, 38 minutes. This was an average speed of 106 miles per hour. Okay, constant.
And Gary, isn't that like 4 hours shorter than the previous record?
The previous record was set in November of 2019. They did it in 27 hours, 25 minutes. So it was just about an hour's difference. These guys had an average speed of 103 miles per hour. And for those of you who are fans of this show may remember that back on May 23rd, 2014, we had Corey Wells, who made a documentary called 32 Hours, 7 Minutes. You can go search on the website to find the show because it was a really good show. And that was 32 hours, 7 minutes back in 2013. And here we are in 2020, 26 hours, 38 minutes. Okay, now there's some people who are saying that this new record is a little dubious because they're taking advantage of very few vehicles being on the road, and therefore they were able to go faster than the guys did last year. What do you guys think?
Well, I think, when it comes to speeding, first, let me say, far be it from me to cast the first stone. And I've got a history of love for the Cannonball Run. I've been participating in One Lap of America for 20 years, which is the offshoot of the Cannonball Run. Brock Yates, the guy who coined Cannonball Run, both the institution of the race itself and the phrase, was a friend of mine, and his son continues to be a friend of mine to this day. I don't know if I'm just getting old, but I'm getting a lot less interested in these record runs. I don't know if, it's, first of all, it's certainly impressive. There's no question about that. It is a feat of endurance, of mechanical engineering and all of that. Is there an asterisk that needs to happen by that? I would say no, there isn't. For a long time, all of these record run guys, they've always looked for any advantage you can. Brock himself used to say, the only rule is there are no rules. And they would always look on the calendar for holidays and, traffic patterns and things where they find, that there'd be fewer impediments to speeding, fewer cops out, that sort of thing. So this is right in line with that. It makes total sense that they ran it. That said, I personally do find it irresponsible. It's obviously you're breaking the law to begin with. And again, I speed, you all speed, I'm sure. This is sort of next level. This is breaking the law while breaking the law. And, if anything bad were to happen, the ability for that to cascade into further issues with coronavirus, or the fact that there are fewer people on the road to help with rescue efforts and that sort of thing. I don't know. I get a little, I think I'm getting old.
I said, God bless America. I love these runs. Not that I would ever want to participate in one, but Gary, it does need an asterisk. They start in Manhattan. I swear to God, most of the time that they made up in setting the new record was just getting into, across the bridge or through the tunnel or whatever. Because even if you leave at 2:00 in the morning, there's still traffic in Manhattan. Whereas these guys left, there was nothing out there. So yeah, I think you got to put an asterisk on it.
Okay, so then let's move on. Since we're talking about going really fast, we'll talk about pretending to go real fast. e-racing. What do you guys think about that? So, the NASCAR guys are doing it. The IndyCar guys are doing it. What do you think?
Well, esports is big business now. And I got to be honest with you. I mean, a lot of people at my company at CNET are really into esports, and they're filling arenas watching kids play, first-person shooter games. Again, I must be getting old. I don't quite understand that. But there's clearly a lot of attention there. There's clearly a lot of young people that are interested in it. And to me, it's a completely natural and reasonable transition to move to esports in this time where people don't have the ability to put on these events, whether it's motorsports. There's, there's talks, if in fact it hasn't already happened, with NBA players playing NBA, EA sports games against each other. That's going to happen in pretty much every form of sport right now. And I think it's a unique opportunity for all of those companies that are involved in that to really get a lot of attention.
Yeah, I've liked it, actually. Yeah, I'm a motor racing fan, and I hadn't really followed e-racing before the whole coronavirus thing. I was astonished at how realistic it can be. There's some stuff that's obviously, fakey and not that appealing. But remember, most of these drivers spend Monday through Friday on simulators. So, this for many of them is a pretty natural transition. The other thing is when you watch these drivers, because when they're broadcast on TV or streamed, they'll show you cameras of the drivers. These guys are intense. I mean, they are riveted on the screens, and they get so angry when something goes wrong. That shows that they're really committed passionately to what's going on. None of them would say, oh, I'd rather do this than be in the real thing. We'd all like to see it in the real thing. But as a substitute, it's been remarkable. And it's really been a lot of fun, especially in the IndyCar stuff, to see so many different drivers coming into the series. Heck, Dale Earnhardt Jr. came in third in the last Indy race. And he wasn't happy coming in third. He thought he could have done better. So I think this is going to be something viable, even when we get back to the real world of racing. But for the time being, it's been a pleasant substitute.
See, so Kyle Busch will be in the next race, the next IndyCar race, by the way. So,
which is great. Yeah.
NASCAR guy comes over, but Chris, I'm thinking about the people that that you work with who are watching the the experts doing the first person shooter games and things like that. So conceivably, there could be a bunch of kids that none of us know that could probably wipe out every single one of those drivers that's competing, but we don't know who they are. Therefore, who wants to watch those guys? So I look at it. This is just they're trying. I'm not down with it at all.
I think that's an excellent point, and I think that's exactly why that'll help the series take off, because people can say, "Hey, I can do that too." If I'm not that good, my buddy is that good to post those same times or better. It creates a relationship with these drivers, these pro drivers, in a way that they otherwise might not be able to. And I think you'll probably see some pro-am style stuff coming out eventually out of this. It'll be a lot more viable, just as there's been a ton of money poured into other forms of esports. I think you'll see more of this going forward. And we've already seen this, this has been coming for a long time. You remember a handful of years, and I believe the program's still going on. Nissan sponsored a whole bunch of kids basically that were driving in simulators, and I forget what the racing series, digital racing series was, but then they got them into real cars, and they became professional drivers. So it absolutely proves out that despite the fact that with most of these there's no full motion rig sims at most of these people's houses, there are skills that translate.
Mm-hmm.
There are, and when you look at a racer like Sage Karam, who participates in e-racing, he wins a lot of races. He's been dominant, in fact, in a lot of what he's done there. So it shows that the really good racers can become extremely good sim racers. Some just can't make the adaptation. But you know what? You have NASCAR drivers who can't do well in Indy, or Indy who maybe can't do well in Formula One, or Formula One who can't do well in another series. Some drivers are just better adapted to certain cars. But what's really impressed me, especially on the Indy side of things, is how racers like Alexander Rossi, and the sim racing is all new to him. He did terrible the first couple of races, then started to really come on. And you'll see as this goes on, as the traditional racers get more and more used to the sim racing, the better ones amongst them rise to the top of the field. It's been fascinating to watch. That my only complaint with it is for the IndyCar side, the TV broadcasters are not doing as good a job as the NASCAR guys are. The TV production values for the NASCAR e-racing are far superior. The commentary is so much better than what's going on the IndyCar side. There's a lot of action going on in the field, and the TV guys for IndyCar are yammering on about equipment in the sim racing and not telling us about what's going on in the race. They need to do more of that, and they need to pay attention to the way that the NASCAR guys have set up doing this remotely from their homes or wherever they're coming in from, where the production values are so much better.
Oh, admit it, you're just a big Jeff Gordon fan.
Related to that, I'd like to know what the economics of putting on one of these broadcasts is for e-racing versus actual real-world racing. My guess is it's substantially cheaper by orders of magnitude.
Yes.
And if they can do that, then they can justify lower ratings on television or on streaming and still make the business case work.
Well, look, I want to say the first NASCAR race got something like 1.2 million viewers on television. I think everybody sat up and paid attention.
Yeah.
All right. So next year, when all of this is behind us, will there be e-racing? Besides your friends who are watching the first-person shooter games.
Yeah, I believe so.
And
I do. I think they'll be televised series. I do.
Really?
Maybe not all of them, but I do think there will be some.
And will there be brand name drivers doing this?
Yeah, and I think you might see people that are wanting to try different forms of motorsports to kind of cross-pollinate into different series or retiree drivers. I think you'll see it.
Look, it's going to be driven by money. And if sponsors see the kind of eyeballs that they can get in e-racing, and those drivers want to keep those sponsors and not let some sim kid take all that money, you bet they're going to stand up and want to do the sim racing because it's going to be money in their pocket. And we got to talk about Kyle Larson, too, who just got fired from Ganassi Racing for, in the heat of the moment, using the N-word, talking to one of his spotters in the race. And again, I think this shows how, riled up these drivers get in the heat of the competition of it. But he made a big mistake. He has definitely hurt his career in a big way.
Yeah, I mean, it's shocking to watch this happen so quickly, but I think it is instructive. I think both iRacing, the actual series, and his team are kind of setting the table here, saying that this is not going to be acceptable and you need to take this seriously. I think one of the other things is, we've seen people just shut off in the middle of the race, like, they're unhappy with how they did and they just kind of bug out. And their sponsors watching that, and their teams depend on that, and they're not going to stand for that. So this is kind of setting the margins of where you're allowed to be.
Yeah, it's a brave new virtual world.
All right, I only have sad stuff to talk about beyond this, so I think this is a good spot we ought to stop. So we're sort of ending on an up note, talking about racing and Cannonball runs and things like that, and not C19. So
good decision, Gary. Let's end it on a high note. And so, Chris Paukert, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. It was great.
Yeah,
and be careful on that. Be careful on that motorbike of yours.
You can only go like 55, maybe 60 if you tuck. There's only so much trouble you can get into, but thank you. I will be careful.
Okay.
One of these days you'll have to ride it over to the studio.
Yeah.
Great.
Real good, everybody. Thanks for having watched Autoline After Hours.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires. Your journey, our passion.
Visit our website, Autoline.tv, where you can watch us live Thursday afternoons. Get your daily fix with Autoline Daily and in-depth analysis and interviews with Autoline This Week. There's all that and much more at Autoline.tv.